Today we have with us Enric Nogueira. Can you share a bit about the importance of a plant-based diet for our planet? Many of our viewers might be not aware what are actually really the benefits.
First of all, I would like to say that the plant-based diet, according to the most prominent science, is the biggest single thing that an individual can do to lower their carbon footprint. Actually, adopting a fully vegan plant-based diet, it is estimated to reduce it by actually 50% your carbon footprint. So sometimes when we deal with these big problems, individuals can feel very overwhelmed, and we feel that we don't have power to change things, but we actually have the power to change things 3-4 times every single day. And that is, for me, very encouraging. And that is a message of hope that we also want to transmit, because with every time that you see to it, you have the chance to eat and to change. And we need energy transition, we need mobility transition, but these are very complex in terms of individual perspectives. But with this one, you have the power yourself. You don't have to push governments, you don't have to push institutions, you can do that yourself. So I think this is a very important message that we convey to people. And when we think about the food systems transition, we need to understand that this is something that we can do today. It's not that complex. So that is why we think that plant-based solutions are that important and missing part of the conversation. The reason why it's important is because when we talk about the climate crisis, we usually talk about emissions. We have this carbon tunnel vision, but we forget about the planetary boundaries. Because the planetary boundaries, for those of you who are not familiar, are the 9 systems that maintain the stable Earth as it is. And animal agriculture is the most invasive industry in all these planetary boundaries, in terms of just the leading cause of biodiversity loss, leading cause of deforestation, water use, water pollution, and the biggest source of methane emissions. So it is really an ecological devastation that this industry is causing.
It's very interesting what you said. How big is actually the impact in your personal carbon footprint? 50% is massive. And if people become aware about that, I think they will start thinking really about their diet. It's an inspiration actually to change. Huh? Very, very interesting. Thanks very much for sharing. Eating meat is very much connected to the mindset of people. Here in Brazil, I think it's part of the culture. I walked around in all the street restaurants. I saw chickens and roasted stuff everywhere. So it's part of their culture actually. And what's your strategy to change the mindset of people? I mean, we are here entering the domain of psychology and behavior patterns, how to sway the masses, how to bring them, how to raise them up to this point and bring change in their behavior.
You are very right that Brazil, same as Spain, where I'm from, is very much part of the culture, but culture changes all the time. And this is something, it's a new phenomenon, because my grandparents' generation used to eat meat like once a month or less. It was a privilege. Now we eat meat 3 times a day. So, and now this is the culture. But our regional diet, the Mediterranean diet in Spain, is very much based in grains, pulses, legumes, and vegetables and fruits. And so it is about rethinking what that culture means. And we can think about many instances outside the environment as well, where culture has changed over time and norms that were accepted years ago are not accepted anymore. And we thought that this was part of our culture, was never going to change. And today we look back and it seems unthinkable, right? So it is about moving forward. We think oftentimes as culture as a set in stone kind of thing, but it's actually quite the opposite. We progress as humans, we progress as societies, and so culture progresses with us. And so this is what we need to understand. And so from a policy perspective, what we try to do is facilitate the change, make these options easier, available, affordable, and also accessible for everybody. And make that sure that people connect, also giving out the information. It's not so much about banning anything, it's about providing an alternative perspective, providing the information, educating the public, and understanding that there is another way of doing things. And just to finalize, it is, if you think about it, it is a win-win-win situation. As you were saying, it is better for your health, it is better for the environment, and it is better for the animals. So when you work with nature, when you understand nature, nature gives back And from a more spiritual perspective, this is exactly what we should be aiming for. And you know better than me how that actually feels. And sometimes it feels like you're giving something up, but quite the opposite. You are gaining so much more.
Exactly.
It's just a matter of understanding, like everything else.
So basically using awareness campaigns, share the information, especially also with decision makers, municipalities, cities. But there's also a little battle probably with the meat industry and the dairy industry, you know, because it's a big profitable business also.
Exactly. Yes, it is. It is. And we live in a capitalistic era where profit is above everything else. So it seems that for profit, you were just mentioning in your introduction, Brazil approved over 180 oil drilling licenses in the Amazon, 3-4 weeks before the COP. First of all, what we need is courageous politicians and politicians that are in touch with the public, but also remember that we have the power. Every social movement that you have seen has been coming from the power, from the people. We see in the Indian movement of independence led by Gandhi, that was a people movement. Every social, civil rights, suffragettes, every big step that we took as a humanity has come from the people. So it is also a responsibility. It is something that it is doable.
Henrik, there are two major reasons for a transition towards a plant-based diet. One is quite obviously it's helping the climate, and it helps us to feed all the 8.5 billion people on planet Earth. That's one very obvious reason. But there's also a moral aspect that animals are our companions, they're our friends, and we should actually live in harmony with them together. And the Brahma Kumaris, the organization which is hosting the studio, is rooted in India. And in India, we have this concept of ahimsa. And ahimsa means is the ethics of non-violence in religion and in culture. It's really embedded also in society. It's a very old tradition. And how important and helpful such a moral and ethical consideration can be in your campaign. Do you see areas where we can bridge that ahimsa concept and the obvious reasons to become vegan, you know, because that would give a lot of extra push to such a move towards veganism or plant-based diet?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'm a person that I'm completely against any form of oppression or violence. And that is just what I understood, that veganism for me was just an extension of that. And it just makes sense because the way it is presented to us, it is so far detached from our choices. So when we go to the supermarket or when we go to restaurants, it is so far detached from the reality of those animals, right? And so I really want to make a point of separating veganism from plant-based diets, because plant-based diets, we look at it from more an environmental perspective, food security perspective, and veganism is more as a spiritual or ethical. We could say that. I don't like to say that. I just like to say common sense. At the end of the day, you know, and it goes back to the saying, do unto others what you would like to do to yourself. And it is that how we should treat each other. And if I want empathy and respect towards myself, the very least I could do is give it on to others. And at the end of the day, we think ourselves as so special. But I always go back to this saying from Native Americans. It goes something like, when humans have cut the last tree, they will realize that we cannot drink, eat, or breathe money. You know, so this is why for me veganism is important. It's just an extension of what you were saying, right? And I was a very heavy meat eater back in the day, and I just one day it clicked, I switched, and I felt that always it was going to be like giving something up, and it became the opposite. I just became so much more in touch with myself, with my surroundings, much more in peace, and it's just a complete transformation. It's hard to put into words. You have not lived it, but it is definitely a big transformation in a very positive way, for sure.
I like very much when you said the spiritual decision for you is just common sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is a new
it is.
is a new thought for me also. Wonderful. So this is a very interesting sharing so far, and I think also great inspiration for our audience to consider the impact of our diet on the climate, but also understand how it influences our mindset. It has a direct impact also on our thoughts, and probably meat-based diet creates a lot of anxiety and fear also, I can imagine. So thanks very much for sharing your insights.